Do you too have dreams of looking like a pixie or some sort of manic gnome that lives in a barn in Norway? Me too. Today I'm going to teach you how to draft and sew your very own Pixie Bonnet. I'm so excited. Let's talk about what you need. Paper, so you may draft and design. Ruler, for drawing lines. Something to draw said lines. Soft measuring tape for measuring your bulbous head. Or you could use a ribbon and you could measure with the ruler later. Scissors, ideally a pair for paper and a pair for your fabric. If you don't have fabric scissors, you'll be fine. You'll figure it out. Material. I'm using a sweater that I love that is much too small for my body, so do whatever you want. This is scraps from a pullover that somebody gave me because they know I like scraps. This is cotton for your lining. You could probably use anything you want for lining. Choose your own poison. Some sort of ribbon or tie. Notes, you probably don't have to use some sort of fuzzy element, but I think that it is adorable. So I'm really excited. Let's get going.
This is a pretty simple design that features a dart and trim that sits on the outside framing the face.
Hi, I'm Olivia from tomorrow. Yesterday Olivia forgot to press record on a pretty vital part of the instructions, which is how to measure your head to get the number you need to make your pattern. So we're gonna do that today. I'm gonna plant my little flower first. I gotta keep him close by. You're going to take your soft measuring tape or your ribbon and you're going to tuck it underneath your chin and bring it around the frame of your face. Make you feel really cute and pretty and sweet. So that number for me ends up being 24. You're going to divide that number in half. So for me, that's 12. You're going to make a 12 by 12, or if you have 26 as your measurement, 13 by 13, so on and so forth. So you're going to make a 12 by 12 square, and that will be where we begin our drafting. If you don't have a soft measuring tape, no worries. You can use a ribbon. You just do the same thing, mark where your ribbon stops, and then you can measure it with a conventional measuring tape. Also, hi, if you're new here, my name is Olivia. I'm the owner of a small sustainable fashion brand called The Rusty Bolt. I'm so excited that you're here. Let's keep going.
Amazing. Now that we have our square, we're going to measure halfway down, finding our middle and marking all the way across. Staying on that middle line, you're going to measure 1 inch in from your back seam. Moving down to the bottom of your square, you will measure 2 inches in from your back seam. Starting in the top corner, connect all these points to make a new back seam. From this new back seam, you'll measure 1 and 2 inches away, marking some points. Find the center, measure up vertically 2.5 inches, make a nice little triangle, and ta-da, you made a dart. Wow, a moment for the transition. Go ahead and cut out your pattern. We'll move on to cutting fabric, or as I like to call it when you're upcycling, harvesting. Here you can see I am viciously amputating the sleeves off of this sweater. This sweater is much too small for me, but I really love the color and I love this 90s S shape that's happening. So to highlight that, I want to make sure I keep them going vertically. But because this pattern is designed to be cut on the fold, I need to make sure that I leave a little seam allowance at the top so that I can go ahead and sew these two pieces together. As a rule, I typically utilize a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So if you feel like that calls to you, go ahead and do that as well. With our main pattern pieces cut, I'm going to go ahead and show you one style of making darts. This approach is pretty straightforward. You make sure that your wrong side is up. You take a marker or a heat sensitive pen and you go ahead and mark the bottom of your dart as well as the top point. This is ideal for any light colored fabric because you can actually see the marks that you've made. If you've never sewn a dart before, you're simply going to match up the bottom points of your triangle and sew a line up to the point. Once again, with the wrong side of your fabric facing up, you'll repeat to the other side. Time to cut our lining. Once again, this pattern is designed to be cut on the fold, so you'll fold your fabric in half and align the top of your pattern piece with the fold of your fabric. For my lining, I am using a cotton, a rather wrinkly cotton at that. Probably should have ironed beforehand, but you know what? That is a future Olivia problem. We are not going to worry about that at the moment. Obviously, if you'd like to pre-iron your fabric, I applaud you. You are a much better person than I, and I hope that you go to bed at night knowing that you are superior to us all. Now that we have our lining cut, I'm going to show you another style of marking darts. Yay! This is a pretty common tailoring style of making darts. Positioning your pattern piece, you're going to go ahead and take a pair of scissors rather than a marker to snip ever so slightly the bottom points of your triangle. I'm going to show you that you cannot see a marker on this dark fabric, so we're going to try something else. So I'm going to show you how to use a needle and thread to mark the top point of your dart. You don't have to flip it over like I did, I just wasn't thinking as far as recording goes. Like usual, orient your fabric and your pattern, snip the bottom points of your dart, take a needle and thread and run it through your top point. Be sure to go through both layers and give yourself a lot of extra thread. Gently pull apart your layers, pull on your thread a bit, and give it a clip. Now you've easily marked both of your darts. Alright, we've cut our lining, we've cut our main, and now we need to cut our trim. With our fabric of choice, we're going to cut a rectangle that is the total length of your original measurement. For me, that's 24 inches. The width of your trim is really up to you. I wouldn't go any more than 4 inches since this is going to be flipped outwards on your bonnet. As I mentioned earlier, you don't have to use a fuzzy element. Here I just use the main for the trim of my bonnet. Now we're going to go ahead and sew our darts. With the wrong side of your fabric facing up, you'll take your fabric and fold right sides together, aligning those snips or those marks that you made earlier. Pin in place. Find the top point of your dart, pin in place, and take it to your machine. Once at your machine, you're going to orient the bottom of your dart under your presser foot. Your goal is to sew from the bottom point of your dart to the top point. I'm using this thread as a visual representation. You do not have to do this. Be sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end of your dart. This just ensures that there's no unraveling that will happen. Repeat this process on the other 3 darts in your project. Once you've completed all of your darts, they're going to be pressed to the center back of your project. With our darts done, we're going to assemble our project. With right side facing up, we're going to orient the front opening of our bonnet at the top. Taking our tie, I've cut this one to 24 inches. We are going to align it on that front opening, making sure we leave room for seam allowance. Repeat on the other side. Next, you're going to take your trim and place them right sides together on top of your lining. Take the width that you cut your trim to and subtract 1 inch. This will be the distance you place your trim from the front opening. For example, I cut mine to 4 inches and I'm placing it 3 inches away from the front opening edge. Once sewn in place, this piece is going to be folded forward, so subtracting that inch allows the seam allowance you need to do so. Pin in place and sew along the edge of your trim. I used a 3/8 inch seam allowance. I wouldn't do any more than half an inch. Fold your trim towards the front opening edge. At this point, you could press with an iron or just evenly distribute pins across the top. Now it's time to assemble. As you can see, I've already sewn the top seam where we left seam allowance rather than cutting on the fold. I've also sewn my darts and pressed them towards the center seam. Placing right sides together, I'm aligning my front opening and sewing with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. At this point, it's looking more like a mat rather than a bonnet, but once it's all folded, you can kind of see how things come together. We only have a few more steps, but I'm going to go ahead and iron. If you had told my childhood self how much I iron as an adult, she would scream. Once again, we are folding right sides together, sewing up the back seam of our main, as well as the back seam of our lining, leaving a 2 to 3 inch gap for turning. Now we are going to sew the bottom seam of our bonnet and closing it all together. Matching the center back seam of your lining to the center back seam of your main, matching your darts on your main to your lining, making sure that they are turned in towards the center, go ahead and pin. This next portion seems a bit tricky, but I'm certain you can do it. It's really just a matter of how we fold our fabric. I've already done it to the other side, so let's do this together. Folding your trim back over itself onto the lining, then folding your main back the same distance, we create an M shape that allows the binding to be secured on the outside of your bonnet. Pin or clip in place and sew your bottom seam shut. We are super close to being done. Once you've got that bottom seam finished, you're going to reach through the gap we left in your lining and turn everything right side out. This part might take some patience, but be persistent and it will get done. Once you're done birthing your hat, go ahead and close the hole where everything was pulled through by finding the gap, tucking in your raw edges, and sewing a small line across. As you can see here, I've used a contrasting color. Ideally, you would use one that matches your lining. Tuck your lining into your mane, and you can see that we are just about finished. I am going to do one final touch just to make sure that everything kind of stays in place. Taking our bonnet over to the machine, I'm going to stitch in the ditch where the trim meets the lining. Placing our main fabric down, I'm going to orient the presser foot right along where that trim is. I'm using a contrasting color here, but you would ideally use one that matches your main fabric. As I sew this seam, I'm taking my time, making sure that the edge where the trim meets the main fabric is always oriented outward, and all of the material is flush against the sewing machine so that nothing gets bunched up. This seam is not really necessary, but I like it because it prevents the fabric from shifting around too much. It's also going to be hidden by the trim being folded back, so it doesn't have to be perfect. As always, make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end of your seam. With that final touch finished, we are done with our bonnet. I'm so pleased with how she came out. If you wanted to, you could probably hand stitch this down, but I like the idea of being able to pull her forward if it's really windy.
Olivia from the future again. I just wanted to pop on and say that I spent the entire morning walking my dog with this hat in the freezing cold, and it's a warm hat. I wanted to test the wearability of the hat. It's fine and good to like make things that are cute, but I always like things that are a little practical as well. So I walked my dog with this hat, and as someone who notoriously hates hats because they're very claustrophobic for me, this was amazing. It's very warm, it doesn't squeeze your head, it stays in place. You can make it as tight or as loose as you want to, and you look adorable. So there's that. Also, incidentally, this is my favorite color, I guess. I made this sweater, I made these hand warmers. So putting together a fit was pretty easy. I'm really excited to see what you all make. I'm excited to see the fabrics that you guys choose. If you like learning fun, silly tutorials, I'll be posting tons more. So please follow, subscribe, like, whatever it is that you do on YouTube. I'm excited to be here and I'm excited to keep teaching people. So I hope that you have a really lovely day and that you stay rusty.